Hi, this is Dr. Thomas Rocco from CBD Health Podcast. Today's guest is Don Moxley. He is the Director of Applied Science at Longevity Labs, but also recently has developed a CBD product that's at ModeMethod.com, which is called HRT Plus, which is for you to use not only for your general health, but recover from exercise. Don's a sports scientist with amazing amounts of experience and data that helps him devise that right product to recover for not only vigorous exercise with good recovery, but also just the general wellness of your health. Don, thanks for taking some time out of your busy day to speak with me on CBD Health Podcast. Good morning, Don. How are you?
I'm good, Dr. Rocco. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for visiting me.
And where are you today?
I am in Rhode Island. Where are you?
We are out on the coast of Oregon.
Coast of Oregon.
Yeah,
Nice.
I don't know if you've ever heard of Cannon Beach. There's a thing there called Haystack Rock. It's a real
Never heard of it.
notorious. So we're just north in a little town called Seaside.
Right. Sounds beautiful.
My wife and I, we live in an RV. So we travel all over the country, and we're here for another week. Then we go north up to Long Beach, and then we're looking for a new place out here in the Oregon, Washington area.
Right, right. So I'm interested. There's so many things I could talk to you about. Like, just to start, I'm just impressed. You're a sports scientist. I mean, that's where
So
you started at the Ohio State University, and that's where you got educated and started there.
exactly.
And you were involved with their athletics, and you're a sports scientist, which is amazing for athletes and their performance and their energy. I'm sure you have a lot to do with that.
Well, and really, Dr. Rocco, it's really simply a listen. And in exercise and in sport, we have endless opportunities to do science, which means we hypothesize, we create an experiment, we collect data, we analyze the data, we rehypothesize, and we go back and so with the problem is with most sport, and I'm talking 99%, they forget the second half of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
They hypothesize, they create the experiment, they run it, but then they don't do any analytics, they don't do any analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And asking the question, is what I'm doing making a difference but more than something else? And unfortunately, sport gets caught up in dogmatism, meaning that their belief systems more than their science. I simply just finish the scientific process.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do the analysis and
Right.
let's find out is what we're doing, is what we're saying we're doing making a difference.
Right.
And I use the term, I think sports science is about creating data streams that coaches and athletes can use to make better decisions.
Right.
Because ultimately that's what it's all about.
So it's hard to make data, I'm as a physician, you want it very objective, and
Right.
so you're talking to athletes, it can be a little subjective in how do you measure things. And that's, I always find, is the hardest thing. You're like, and is the measure performance, or is it other things that you measure?
You measure everything.
Right.
Okay, so first of all, with the last, well, in 2017 at Ohio State, we measured that year. We started measuring 3.5 million data points a year, a season.
See, that's what you want. Numbers. The more numbers, the better data.
And then you peel into it and try to separate the signal from the noise. What is true signal, and it was an amazing experience. It was absolutely amazing. Frankly, college athletics was not ready for the scrutiny. There's so much, listen, and you run into it in medicine. There's so much dogmatic belief, particularly in dietetics, nutrition, psychology, strength and conditioning. All these things wind up being so dogmatic. This is I'm a West Side guy. I'm a HIIT guy. I'm a this. I'm a that. I'm a carnivore. I'm a vegetarian. I'm a vegan. the thing is, Dr. Rocco, is that I in one of my talks, I say we had our last extinction event as humans about 1,000,000 years ago. The DNA that we walk around with has been stabilized largely for about 100,000 years, depending on the paleontologist you talk to. You only have evolution with extinction. Otherwise, all you have is diversity. And so we have had this incredible phase of diversity. And it's fair to think that Thomas Rocco could be a vegan and Don Moxley could be a carnivore, or vice versa. Right. The question is, what are the markers that you're putting on to look at this N of 1? And this is what we saw with my athletes, is that, you know, they're all very talented wrestlers. They're all very talented wrestlers, but there's something that separated my All-Americans are better from my guys that could start for us but never made All-American versus my guys that never started for us. And they all practiced together. They all trained together. They all ate together. So what were the key points that separated those the separated the groups? And that's where you have to have data to make the call.
Right. And you found that your data helped those performance better that weren't the All-Americans.
We found that. So the question is, what do you coach? So I'll throw it at you. In the sport of wrestling, elite wrestlers. So I've got Olympic medalists all the way down to, you know, I don't think I had a guy in my room that wasn't at least a state champion somewhere, or a state or a state placer. You know, very talented kids. So what were those fine points? Well, what we found that physically, the thing that distinguished the three groups across the board, cardiovascular fitness. And that's in the sport of wrestling. You know, everyone thinks, oh, wrestling's an anaerobic sport, you got to train anaerobically. Nope. All energy is eventually aerobic. All energy. Right. The question is when, and what we saw was my elite wrestlers that had superior cardiovascular fitness recovered better. Right. So they had the ability to flurry, go out of bounds. On the way back to restart wrestling, they gained an advantage over someone with a lower cardiovascular fitness level. And this was then represented, Dr. Rocco, in heart rate variability. So using heart rate variability, and this was one of the real big discoveries that we had, was that we got to where we could predict who would make All-American based on the HRV status the first day of the national tournament. Wow. That's incredible. So if I didn't send a guy, the last year I was with the program in 2018, we sent 10 guys to nationals, whole starting lineup, first time in school history. We had 8 All-Americans, most in school history. The 2 guys that did not make All-American, I could have told you the first day, because I couldn't get them to nationals with a morning HRV of 75 milliseconds or higher. Right. Everyone else was higher. Wow. That's the incredible. 2 guys, and I have about 4 years worth of data that got better as we went, because our technology got better and our data systems got better. But if I can't send a wrestler to nationals with an HRV, an RMSSD of 75 milliseconds or better, they don't make All-American. Or 70. If it's 70 or less, they don't make it. If they're 75 or better, they do. I didn't have anybody in that little that 5 millisecond window. But yeah, this was, and then I had this incredible opportunity to go work in the cannabis business. I went down to Florida. So and because one of the things that was happening was I'm getting pinged. We were in a partnership with the Air Force Research Lab at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And they work with all the elite warrior groups, the Delta Forces and the SEALs and so forth. And they also worked with other high-level sport programs. And I have these other pro coaches reaching out to me saying, hey, what do you know about cannabis and HRV? I'm like, I don't know anything about it. My guys.
I don't know anything either, but honestly, I don't know either.
My guys were NCAA athletes. It was banned. They couldn't use it.
Right, exactly. That's what I would think too. I don't see, again, I don't see cannabis and college athletes, Division I, as something you would use together because of
this is what
being
we're learning
illegal.
now.
Right, exactly.
Well,
This is interesting.
only the THC is illegal.
Right, right,
Okay, this is important. And
right,
again, one of the reasons I was excited to talk to you was the title of your podcast.
right.
And it's not until I had a good friend that I'd worked in the industry with. He said, "Listen," he said, "you want to work in the cannabis business?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And the offer was ridiculously good. So I moved to Florida and started working in a medical cannabis provider. And it's not until I say you take a deep dive into the deep end of the pot pool that you really start to learn about cannabis. And and the amount of information that is out there that most people don't know about, and it's readily available. You just have to, it's just pull the veil back.
Right.
And then it took me about a half a month of looking at the literature. Dr. Rocco, I've been teaching the exercise sciences for 35 years. I had never heard of the endocannabinoid system until I started selling weed in Florida. But you don't have to look at the endocannabinoid system very long to say, HRV, heart rate variability, is a measurement of your endocannabinoid system status. And
That's
so
interesting.
this is what really got my interest. And then you start to move away from, unfortunately, we legalize cannabis on the backs of epileptics and cancer patients. It immediately becomes an adult use rec market, right? I mean, that's because
Right
the
there.
people who raise the product, that's what people buy. I'm excited about, I think we're on the verge of rescheduling right now. I mean, as I look at what's going on, I think we could realistically see this within the next congressional term.
It's funny you said that. We talked about it this morning in my hospital. We were
Yeah.
talking about that.
It's on the verge. I can't believe it hasn't happened yet, but it looks like things are coming. But when you look at the other cannabinoids besides THC, when you look at the terpenes that come within the cannabis plants, this is where the magic's at. And it took me again, and my wife at the time, my wife and daughter lived in Ohio. I was living in Florida by myself. My kitchen of my apartment looked like Breaking Bad. I had gram scales and beakers, and I was figuring this stuff out.
Right.
And so I started to work on some combinations. Your podcast is called the CBD Health Podcast. You know what? I'm watching people sell CBD products for $120 to $180 a gram when I'm buying the product for $1.
Right. Yeah, no,
and I'm like, okay, there's a disconnect here. But then you start to, I'll tell you what was an amazing experience. I'm at a pain management conference at the Breakers in Palm Beach. And I have this Jamaican medical assistant come up to me, and she says, we used to grow this in our backyard. And she said, my parents would soak it in our finest rum, not just soak it in rum. They would soak it in their finest rum. And she said, when I would have menstrual problems, they would give me a shot in my orange juice and they'd go away. She says, my father would rub it on his knees. He was a farmer, and he would rub it on his knees. So he's doing an alcohol-based extraction, at a simple level.
Right.
And I went back to our lab, and so we had strains of cannabis that were CBD dominant. And I was talking to our lab director about how he's processing, and when we used a process called supercritical CO2, which so you put it in, it pressurizes, it puts CO2, it liquefies the terpenes and the terpenoids and the cannabinoids. Those come out, but then he said, this is where we decarb it. We decarb the product. And I go, wait a minute, why are you decarbing CBD? I said, I get why you're decarbing THC. I understand that.
Yeah, right.
But why are you decarbing CBD? No one had thought about it. They just did what they've always
Right.
done.
That's what I've read it too. Same thing. You decarb CBD.
And I'm like, no, you want CBD in its acid form.
Mhm.
It hangs on many more receptors. It's much more biologically available. CBD, I'm not knocking it. I mean, it clearly plays a role in inhibiting FAAH and maintaining anandamide levels. But at the same time, that the acid form, that's the, and so so listen, I went and I got the extracts.
Mhm.
I ran and did little N of 1 studies on myself
Mhm.
using HRV and sleep as my indicators. And lo and behold, CBDA works better than CBD. Then you throw in beta caryophyllene, the terpene. It's called a dietary cannabinoid.
Mhm.
That is the sledgehammer. That is a wonderful terpene.
Mhm.
And so this is how it all comes together. And then the company I'm working with now, Longevity Labs, they came to me and they said, listen, can we make an HRV supplement?
Mhm.
I said, I've already done it. I said,
Right. Sure. You.
and tried to give it away. I tried to give it away to 4 different people.
Right. Wow.
And they said, no one's thinking in these terms. So that's when we created our HRV plus, that we ran samples on. We did
Right.
our sampling a little over a year ago. We came to market in January.
Mhm.
And it's really just a matter of taking what I think are the important parts as it
Mhm.
relates to endocannabinoid system status,
Mhm. Right.
boosting that as much as possible. The number one driver of poor HRV is inflammation.
Mhm. Right.
So the CBDAs and the beta caryophyllines hang on those inflammatory receptors. We carry it, and instead of putting it in a coconut oil, we put it in a fish oil, DHA,
Mhm.
EPA rich fish oil, to try and lower inflammation. But we also put, are you familiar with specialized pro-resolving mediators,
No.
SPMs?
No.
So SPMs are the final biologically available end of the inflammation process. You'll love SPMs. These
Mhm.
are wonderful molecules, but they're biologically available. So you don't, when we have an assault on the cell, our inflammatory process, our omega-6s become arachidonic acid, become the prostaglandins, drive the inflammatory response,
Mhm.
which is important. But we got to get that resolved. But when we
Right.
throw like an NSAID, a COX inhibitor in, not only does it limit the COXs in the omega-6s, it limits
Mhm.
the COX enzymes in the omega-3s.
Mhm.
So you don't finish the process. So with SPMs, these are ready to go. They're prepackaged, enzymatically derived, ready to go. And so we found a lab in Spain that could put this in. So that was the combination that we went with in this version. So the CBD, which is it's almost a throwaway, but
Mhm.
it just comes with the CBDA.
Right.
The CBDA is what I'm interested about. The
Right.
beta caryophyllene is what I'm interested about. CBD is nice to have. And we put that in that omega-3 to lower inflammation and again push the SPMs in. And so it's that's how a sports scientist
Right. So
who,
thinks about it.
yeah, what do we need to do to return the system to normal? I'll tell you a funny story. My
Mhm.
wrestlers, um, the last year I was with the program. So wrestling comes in like 2 seasons. So we have our fall season,
Mhm.
which is really weight cutting, getting things together, getting down to weight. You wrestle a little bit, but it's
Mhm.
typically not high stakes wrestling.
Right.
High stakes wrestling starts in January. That's when we start our Big Ten season,
Mhm.
working towards Big Tens the end of February, nationals the beginning of March. Um, so we have a block of time right in between Christmas and January 3rd to 5th, usually before the first match comes, where we can do a really deep training block. It's our
Mhm.
last chance. So the guys had gone home for a holiday. They come back and we've got like 6 days, and I'm thinking we're going to bury these guys. It's my
Mhm.
last good training block. But they come back and we do an HRV study right before practice, and I'm like, I went to the coach. I go, we cannot do the practice we have planned. These guys are not prepared for it. Their
Wow.
HRVs were all low, lowest we measured all season. And what we learned is, there's lots of stresses. Family stress may be the worst stress.
Is that right?
Yeah. So we had to let these guys get back, sleep in their own beds one night, kind of getting back into their rhythm that they had from from before the holidays. So we went easy that day. We just did drilling, a lot of instruction, things like that. Come in the next day, HRVs are all bumped back up exactly where they should be. Buried them for about 4 days, drove them back down, gave them a couple of days recovery. They popped right back up. And that's, that was, so understanding stress, it's all around us.
Absolutely.
But the question is your system optimized in order to deal with it?
Right, to deal with it.
And
so in terms of this is first of all, you are the director of the applied science at Longevity Labs. So you're like,
yes,
you are so involved with that and brand development. But how do you, like, there's a couple of things I just want to say. When you talked about initially, from when we first started talking about, when you said recover, which I thought was amazing, is that I thought we were going to talk about recovery of working out, and then you recover throughout the night, and then you have another good practice. You were talking about your recovery is within seconds from, which makes you better in your meet, which is amazing. But
yeah, you can do a micro recovery.
it's unbelievable. Like I didn't think of it when you're first talking about that. My recovery was, I had my workout and then I'm recovering, have a better workout. You were like, I'm going to recover so I can finish this meet better than that other person, which is amazing. But how do you measure HRV? Is it just do you have something on them to measure their heart rate?
So back then we were measuring, so heart rate and HRV are two different variables that we're measuring. So in practice and in training, we're typically measuring heart rate. Okay. We're measuring training load. Okay. What is the load of what we're doing and what's the impact? HRV, we're measuring. Back then, we were measuring either first thing in the morning or right before practice. Those were the two opportunities that I got. Now we have technologies that, we have Oura rings, and we have Now watches, and we have wearables that we can wear at night. And I prefer, my preferred HRV is a nighttime HRV. And the devices that we have are really good, that we're getting good data there. If you don't have this kind of technology, well, then you can use, listen, there's some pretty cool technology out there that if you want to measure HRV, you can use the camera on your phone. There's an app called HRV for training that you put your finger over it. So if you want to start to get up, if you want to wake up in the morning, put your finger on your phone. I've worked with a company out of LA. They do a corporate wellness program where they use camera phones looking at HRV as a score. They're looking at the work athlete, that what are you carrying into work that day? What's on your shoulders from a stress standpoint that may affect the way you perform with your team? So there's lots of very approachable technologies. You can use chest straps. I use a polar chest strap to an app on your phone called Elite HRV. Does it, and the chest strap. First of all, if you're exercising, you're not using a heart rate transmitter, you're kidding yourself. You're leaving money on the table. But you can take that and multi-purpose that. But to answer your question, I prefer these wearable techs. Again, the Oura rings, the Now watch, the cardio moves. There's good, approachable, affordable technologies that you can use to get this.
Right. Wow. That's amazing. So the product that you have, is it available already?
It
or
is.
It's still developing? Because I went on the longevity website, and you have so many things that you take for health and aging and recovery and sleep, cognition, mood, brain function. And all of those are not CBD products. That's why
so Longevity Labs, we have multiple brands. Because of cannabis laws, we have to set segregate
Right.
the cannabis products away from our other products.
Right.
So if you want to find out more
How do you
about
find it? Yeah.
modemethod.com, www.modemethod.com, modemethod.com.
Method.com.
Yep. And that's where you find it. I'll tell you what, Dr. Rocco, before we're done, I'll get you a discount code that your listeners can use.
Right.
Get 15% off.
Right.
And we'll set that up. But yeah, that's where you go. And in fact, I'll tell you what we also have is we just created a sample program. So if you don't want to dive into this, and you don't, I mean, I think the product's like $59 a bottle or something like that. That's a month's supply. But we have a sample up there of 4 days for $1. And you got to pay shipping, so it comes out less than 10.
Something to see if it works.
And I'll tell you what, there's no question whether it works or not when it works for you. There's some that has not worked for. I mean, let me be very clear. But a lot of people are loving this, and if you just want to try it and do something and spend less than $10, you can get it there.
So is this a CBD that has no THC? So if somebody's worried about
no, we are. So pay attention. So watch the site.
Right.
On our next evolution, we're going to run a product that is THC free. The product right now is a hemp extract. So there is the possibility of a small amount of THC, but it's less than the guidelines. It's listen, if your job requires drug testing, obviously you don't want to put yourself at risk.
Right.
We will have in our next run a version that's THC free. That we did the first run. We wanted to see whether the market would accept it. Looks like it does. I was at the NSCA Tactical Training Conference a couple weeks ago down in Las Vegas, and here are police and fire and warriors and soldiers, all of which are drug tested. Now, as soon as you retire and you're no longer being drug tested, then I think the hemp product that, the full complement of the other terpenes is certainly okay. I think a little THC with a lot of CBDA, a little THCA with a lot of CBDA is better than just CBDA.
I agree 100%.
And there's probably, we've created a lot of fear around cannabis that it's a gateway drug, things like that. And there's no data to support that.
I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah,
not at all.
It's a gateway away from opiates. I mean, if you use it right.
I've seen it. I've absolutely have seen it. And that's what I do here in Rhode Island. I educate about use of THC, and that's how I got into CBD. But we do licensing with the Department of Health, and we have to look at their prescription profile. And the people that are now using THC, using medical marijuana, are not taking opioids. I mean, just my own experience. And in other states, you can see the states that have medical marijuana laws have less opioid issues. So it definitely is a good.
One of the exciting things that so my wife and I, we live in an RV. So I'm in my office in our RV right now, and we were up in Taos, New Mexico, the first of the year. We were driving down to Sedona, Arizona, and we got stranded in Gallup, New Mexico. We're driving down, we spend the night there, we wake up and there's like a foot of snow on the ground, and Flagstaff is snowed in, you can't get through it. So we spend a couple extra days there, and the gal that was staying behind us, she was an Army vet, and you don't have to talk to someone very long to figure out they've had to deal with some shit that they shouldn't have had to deal with.
Stress, right?
And she was telling me about it, and I said, wait. I said, listen. I said, I don't need to know your story. I said, if you want to tell it, I'll certainly listen, but you don't feel like you have to. I said, but I've got a feeling you've had to deal with some stuff that people shouldn't have to deal with.
Right.
I gave her a bottle of the HRV Plus, and didn't expect to hear anything from her. It's just like, here, try this, see how it goes. A month later, she finds me. She goes through the company, we get connected. She sends me this testimonial letter that I'm bawling reading.
Right.
She's not taking benzos anymore. She's not taking the nighttime sleep stuff anymore. She takes some HRV plus. It normalizes endocannabinoid system status, because I don't know that a lot of people understand this, but the fear sensing part of your brain called the amygdala. I don't need to tell you this, but the rest of the world, the amygdala. And when you look at fear conditioning in dogs and mice, if you fear condition dogs and mice, what happens? There is a permanent drop of anandamide in the amygdala. This is where the hypervigilance comes from with trauma. And it looks like it doesn't come back. Okay, if you're born in a rattlesnake pit, the only way you survive is through being hypervigilant. And if I take you out of the rattlesnake pit and I put you in a house full of bunny rabbits, you're still vigilant. It's still there. So listen, you take a bunch of kids, of American kids, and you drop them in Vietnam, the closest thing to a rattlesnake pit that we can make. They come back traumatized. They come back with a love of cannabis. Well, it makes sense, because consuming exogenous cannabinoids is at least leveling up your endocannabinoid system and reducing the hypervigilance, returning to normal. Right. This is the important part. So, and it looks like THC, there's a value there. Again, I like the THCA. I love the CBDA. And the beta caryophyllene for me is just it's a wonderful terpene.
So I'm speaking with you. We're talking sports. You're a sports scientist. Obviously, you can take this for recovery, for your athletics, for your exercise. But it sounds like you can take it for other things to help with your stress. But like, do you recommend you take it every day, or you take it after exercise? Like, obviously it depends on what you're using it for.
No, Dr. Rocco, I think when you start looking at recovery, you have to pay attention to sleep. You have to pay attention to, the ultimate recovery phase that we have in our circadian process. So we recommend that you take it an hour or two before bed. Dr. Rocco, it is not a magic bullet. Okay. Right. It will not solve all things. Right. But what it does is that it will support your endocannabinoid system, the racing brain that comes with stress and hypervigilance. It quiets that. Right. And if you combine it with other exercise, nutrient dense food, get your sleep right, get light at the right times of day, eliminate toxic light, develop a personal purpose in life to push against everything that's pushing against you. This is a tool that you can put in that helps. Right. And
I like that you say that. There's not a bullet. It's part of everything you need to do to make yourself feel better. If it's from exercise, stress, anxiety, PTSD, and it's true.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, the only silver bullet we really have is exercise. It just takes you an hour a day to chew it. Right. And again, there's no nutrient that we can put into our diet that will replace moving more. Nothing. And this, we can't ever forget that. And so no, but when you're doing a lot of, if you just need that little kickstart, again, so I told you about the soldier we met in Gallup. I've gotten a couple more testimonials in on top of that have been that just make your heart, proud. That it helps. But you know what? I've had a few people say, this isn't working for me. And I get it. So
absolutely.
There's diversity,
Right. That's absolutely. Well, this is really exciting. Because I went onto the longevity website, which again is also great products outside of cannabinoid, CBD, and would look great.
So that's our spermidine. That's our spermidine product. Right. So that we use in longevity, but today we're talking cannabis.
Yeah. So there's some. Even the longevity websites, longevity.com, right? I think it is.
No, longevitylabs.io.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Longevitylabs.io. There's still some great products there. Like I said, outside of CBD, that looked great. I mean, I just went through and that's what I was a little confused. I'm like, and I will talk about anything. I even thought about those products as being something to talk about, but this is modemethod.com to look at. I want to look at that
Mode
website.
Method, yeah, we call it Mode Method, MODEMETHOD.com.
Yeah.
And it's HRV plus. And like I said, you'll on the site, we have that new samples. Literally, it went up last week.
Right.
We're really excited about that.
And you said there's a discount code.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, the discount code, let's call it Rocco 15.
Rocco 15. I like it.
Yes. Put that in at checkout.
ROCCO15 is the discount
Put that
code.
in at checkout and you'll get a 15% discount.
Great. Awesome. No, this is real. This is something I've never really talked about. I love sports, played sports in college, Division III, nothing big, not like the Ohio State University. I do coach a little bit in the area with some high school kids, but
what sport?
Football.
Oh, okay.
I do enjoy. I mean, my kids have played lacrosse, hockey, football. As a parent, you're always involved.
Yeah.
You never have enough volunteers.
As a proud dad, my daughter then went on to play lacrosse at Ohio State, and
no kidding,
she's coaching at Pitt now. She coached at Northwestern last year when they won their national title.
No kidding, really?
Yeah. So, so we have a lot of pride there in my
good
young
for
lady.
You. That's awesome. That's great. But this is like I've never thought. I mean, I've always thought about CBD as something that can help. And I wrote something up years ago how recover from exercise, but this is definitely a step above, and it's researched better. And I think this is something that could be useful for athletes.
I think so too. And again, the challenge is, Dr. Rocco, trauma, we are just beginning to understand trauma. And I mean, even you're the guy with the medical license that did all the extra years in school. Medicine is just starting to recognize the impact of trauma.
Right, I'm going to give you an instance. ARDS, adult respiratory distress syndrome. It is a problem of some insult in the body that causes all this inflammation in the lungs, and you're on a ventilator. And we are making people survive mostly not because of medications to help with inflammation, but we just do better with the ventilation. We do low pressure ventilation rather than high ventilation, so there's not more insult. But something like you're talking about, decreasing this, I think this is eventually, like you said, we change the schedule. We're going to research this. We're going to be using this in the hospital as part of a therapy. It's going to happen.
We need rescheduling, and again, I think with rescheduling, all of a sudden you're going to start to see the breakout of cannabinoids and terpenoids as more therapeutic. Again, God love the people in the business now, but right now that business is about selling THC to THC consumers.
I agree. Totally agree.
And I am not pro smoking. I am not pro vaping. You pay your lungs were not designed to absorb smoke or oil on a regular basis. I think oral and transdermal use of this, again, I think about that Jamaican medical assistant, and the story that she told me, and that's what really got my gears turning when she told me that story. I think they're understanding stress.
Right.
I'll tell you what. I'm working on a talk right now where I talk about health going from 0 to -10. This is kind of where the healthcare system is. We don't interface much at 0. By the time we get to -1 or -2, we're starting to develop some symptoms. So we start throwing some pharmaceuticals at that. And then we start to work our way down into the -6, 7s, and 8s. We're starting to flirt with organ failure at that point. -10, you're dead. And I think about there was the president of the American Psychological Association is at University of Penn, Martin Seligman. They call him the father of positive psychology. And he said psychology is 0 to -10 right now. Why aren't we doing something to go from 0 to 10? And I think this is the opportunity that we have with medicine, in the fact that what are the key performance indicators that we can use to give people a look at themselves. And I think HRV is one of those 10,000 foot markers.
Right.
because I know at 0 you're dead. I know in the hundreds you're an Olympian. The rest of us are in between that. So, you know, what are the tools that we need to drive that up so that we're never flirting with the minuses? We're always working in the positives.
Right.
So I think we can use this as a tool to stay in that space.
Absolutely. Well, it was great talking to you, Don. I got to go back to work. We're going to keep in touch. But I'm definitely interested in looking at the website. Something different than your Longevity Lab website. So it's very interesting.
Longevitylabs.io, Mode Method. You can hit us on social media. You can hit I'm Don Moxley on Instagram, on Twitter. I'm not a big Facebook guy. LinkedIn, if you have questions, you can ping me through LinkedIn. Don't give me some kind of an AI chat greeting.
Good. Perfect.
I'll block that.
All right, but great talking to you. I got to go back to work, and let's keep in touch.
Thanks. Go keep the world healing.
Trying. Nice talking to you, Don. Take care.
Bye.